Team LH nearly imploded. They did implode. For a stage of maybe 30 minutes, they were definitely going crazy. I will be honest in thinking that Lewis should have been let past initially, but having seen the way the race ended and the fact that Piastri didn't catch them ultimately, I think it was actually a genius call by Merck to allow them to fight, to not make it feel like George was being robbed of a victory and allowing Lewis to fight for the victory. Obviously, Lewis didn't get past, and Lewis got P2, and Lewis was mighty pissed about it. Lewis was very pissed about it. But you got to understand, George did a great strategy, and George gambles so much. George gambles anytime he can. If George is ever not in contention for a podium, he will risk it all for a podium. And it doesn't work like 7 out of 10 times, but 3 out of 10 times he gets a podium. And I guess 1 out of 10 today, he managed to grab the win. Obviously, we have to look. Did he only manage to pull that strategy off because his car was lighter? Because I know it's only 1.5 kilos, but 1.5 kilos in these cars, I mean, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot. 1.5 kilos can send you, especially when the field spread is so tight, it can literally be the difference between, okay, I'm going to win this race or I'm off the podium. Truth be told, I thought George Russell was going to snag P3 because, well, I mean, there was just no, in my head, there was like 30 laps, plus Lewis had 16 laps younger tyres. Basically any other track other than Monaco, and that will give you enough of a delta to overtake. 16 laps, that is crazy. But for some reason, George still had it. Do you know what? Out of the corners, George still had an obscene amount of grip. And the Mercedes, there just wasn't enough of a straight line delta between them. Like, Lewis wasn't really... He caught him in the slipstream and the DRS, but it wasn't anything crazy. Like, he wasn't homing in on him. And as he was catching him by a second. And I was thinking, obviously you need a delta to overtake someone. Like, there's no way the delta to overtake someone is like 1.5 seconds around Spa. Like, there is just no way. Like, it just doesn't seem right, especially when the person in front of you is in the free air without slipstream or DRS. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But clearly it made sense to George because this man put on his Megamind brain. He decided, I'm going to go full frontal. I'm going to put it all on the line. And it actually worked. But you know what didn't work? Sergio Perez. This man started P2, right? And I can understand the fact that Lewis got him off the line and, he's battling in with him in the first sector and he has to tuck him behind. I understand that. Everyone gets bad starts, I don't think Max got a particularly amazing start either. But can someone tell me why Sergio Perez genuinely, on actual pace, went P2 to P8? Like, he didn't have an issue. I know he was complaining about the straight line speed, but that wasn't an issue. Like, I thought, okay, maybe he might have an MG UK issue. Like, so his battery isn't charging correctly or anything like that. He didn't have an issue. It just turned out that he was just slow. Because Max was dealing with the same straight line issue, you could say, but he just had more pace. And, I mean, had it turned out slightly differently, Norris would have taken Verstappen because of this. Because Sergio was really holding up. Sergio was really holding up Verstappen, especially in those couple of laps where Verstappen was trying to take George and, George actually got past Sergio. That, lap or two, it really did damage Verstappen's race. And listen, we can all wail on Sergio as much as we want. I literally wailed on him too much last video. I won't say too much. A serviceable amount last video. Oh my goodness. Oh, it is time. It's time. The guy clearly doesn't have the pace for this. Clearly this is not going to work. Even when the whole Red Bull organization is tumbling down, because they are tumbling down and they are only going to get slower. I don't see Red Bull having a massive turn of pace like McLaren did in the second half of 2023. I genuinely only see Red Bull getting slower. I mean, that only seems like the correct conclusion, that they will get slower. McLaren needs to maximize points. Can somebody tell me why Lewis Hamilton or even George Russell, whichever one you want to say was the rightful winner of this race, has more wins than Lando Norris this season. How many races has Lando Norris had a race-winning car and just bottled it? And then you have Mercedes, literally, the second they get a sniff of they have a race-winning car, they take advantage of it. Even when they don't have a race-winning car, they're still winning races. It makes me think that McLaren are just such... They're not bottle jobs, but they've got to look at some serious... They've got to do some serious introspection in this summer break, because this is definitely not what you want to do to win a championship. I personally would not have swapped Lando Norris with Oscar Piastri. And say, maybe, obviously, you want to say my decision making isn't, F1 championship level. But even Christian Horner said that was the wrong decision to go by. Even Christian Horner. And you can say he's just saying that. But clearly, when he was saying it, he almost had like a suppressed smile as, yeah, they genuinely don't know what they're dealing with. Anyone with a brain that wanted to win a championship could see that Lando Norris is not doing a great job in this championship battle. He isn't doing a great job. Like, he has pace, but things are just going wrong. This is not a legit championship contention. Realistically, Mercedes are doing just as decent of a job challenging Max for the championship as McLaren. It's just that Mercedes, in general, started behind McLaren at the start of the season. And you've got to wonder, at the start of the season, Max had a pretty dominant car for the first few races. And he genuinely took 100% capacity of it. And he managed to build the buffer that is literally saving his championship hopes today. But if McLaren are in the same position, are they really capitalizing like Red Bull are? I don't think they are. Do you know who was capitalizing? Mercedes. Mercedes, or other than George Russell's bad qualification in Hungary and his DNF, which wasn't his fault, just a car issue in Britain, Mercedes have been on crazy good form. Even in Austria, George Russell hanging in third, and then Lewis being a little bit behind, getting a bit of damage. It's like Mercedes have been on good form, and as a team, they're so competitive and consistent. It seems like there is rarely a time in which McLaren are on the same page. And even when they're on the same page, they're not really on the same page. As in, they should have been on the same page in Hungary, but they weren't really on the same page. So although they got a 1-2, the perfect 1-2 for McLaren is fastest lap win for Lando, second place Piastri. But that just isn't happening. And you have drivers like Lando Norris. You have drivers like George Russell. You have drivers like Lewis Hamilton who are just taking advantage. And yeah, you could say that, okay, Merck wasn't pulling any team orders. If Lewis was in contention for the championship, Merck would have pulled team orders. I guarantee you. There is no doubt in my mind. And so I've got to wonder what is going on inside that camp. Because the Red Bull camp is not in shambles. It's just destroyed on whatever side Sergio Perez is on. Because that guy he's not on the level. Like, let's just leave it there. He just isn't on the level. McLaren, they've got operational issues in terms of strategy. Their pace is good. The pace of the car is great. Without the pace of the car, McLaren can't contend for the championship. Which I know sounds obvious, but I'm talking about other things like pit stops, strategy. Too many mistakes. In Great Britain, Lando Norris missing his mark. In this Grand Prix, Piastri missing his mark, costing him 2 seconds in the pits. That 2 seconds is a lot. That 2 seconds, if that was converted to race time, that would have been like a lap or two earlier. He would have been on the back and had DRS on Hamilton. That's a lot. These things matter. Those seconds in Great Britain, yeah, they might not have cost Lando. Lando would have finished third place anyways. But they would have meant Lando would have actually had a DRS opportunity at the start when he did get out on those softs against Lewis, instead of floating just outside of the DRS and then being stretched out. So there are some serious operational problems. Basically everything other than the car and the raw pace of the two drivers is good. Everything else needs to be looked at on a thorough level, on an operational level in McLaren. I was gonna say in Red Bull's, in Verstappen's case, I guess, you know, he is carrying the team. There is literally no chance. There is zero chance that Red Bull keep this constructors with Sergio Perez on the team. Today has proven. And I think if Sergio Perez started 8th and finished 8th, it would have been one thing. But today has proven that even on a day where he doesn't fuck up in quali and qualify P16th, even when he qualifies P2, he just isn't fast enough. He isn't fast enough to extract the type of results. You know, he needed to get a podium here. He needed to get a P4. And if you put Max second on the grid, even if you grant the fact that Lewis might have taken him on the start because Lewis had a blinding start, I don't believe Max would have finished that low. I believe between the free air and being up behind the leaders or the front two in the podium positions, I believe Max would have at least, grabbed the P3, P4, fought Piastri at the end. Sergio, no chance. Absolutely no chance. Do you know what else has no chance? Freaking Ferrari. They are good, but they're just not good at the same time. They've got like no pace. Well, they don't have no pace. But no, they don't have any pace. It looks like they have some semblance of a car that is kind of fast. The way that Leclerc was kind of clinging on to the coattails of, Hamilton. But Hamilton looked very comfortable. And, what's it called? Leclerc looked not comfortable. Leclerc didn't look comfortable pushing that hard to stay that close to Hamilton. So it was really a matter of time before he kind of pushed back. And whenever a driver started to close in on him, it's like his defense was basically nothing because he had no more pace to give. He couldn't turn up the heat, as in when Norris was chasing Verstappen was like, can I push? Yes. He turned up the heat and he managed to stop Norris from just taking him. But there seems to be none of that for Ferrari's case. Like, Ferrari are genuinely just about there. They're just about there, which isn't enough when you have, a steaming... what's it called? A steaming McLaren or a steaming Red Bull of Verstappen behind you. I think it's very... it's disappointing, but obviously you want to have better races, but there isn't really an easy fix for Ferrari. Ferrari are genuinely just lacking pace. I think obviously... I genuinely think they're lacking pace. With more pace, Leclerc will be in a different spot this weekend. So that's definitely going to be worrying for them because there's not much they can do short term to fix that. Maybe with something like McLaren, you can operationally start to fix things instantly. But with like a development issue, this is not going to be looking good. But you know what is looking good? Freaking Mercedes. Mercedes are looking amazing. They're looking great. Everyone was like, Lewis is washed. He's getting P9. He's getting beaten by George. George was only in P7 and Lewis was in P9. And both the car's performance was like, this is down the drain. And they're like, Lewis made such a great decision going to Ferrari. And I know, I still think he did make a great decision because Merc have some issues, man. But overall, I think it's so crazy the turnaround they've managed to make. It genuinely is crazy. And they haven't, completely redesigned the car. They haven't got a new B-spec concept, whatever you want to call it. They genuinely have just worked at the decent foundation they had. And although they didn't start the season off strong, something about the car clearly is fundamentally it just works. And it is better. It is so much better. One has to wonder, if Merc wasn't messing about for the past 2 years, where could they be? Because this is genuine championship contending performances. I saw there was a stat that Sky Sports put out the other day that Lewis Hamilton has scored in the past 6 races, essentially since Merc got their act together. Lewis Hamilton has scored the second most amount of points. Imagine if he started the season like that, he would be in contention. But you guys let me know.